What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be speaking about having your partner's sun squaring your Saturn in synastry. When it comes to having the sun square Saturn synastry aspect with somebody in synastry, this can really be one of those very intense and even very drama bringing aspects to share with someone when it comes to the relationship, because you're bringing in a very disciplined, responsible and restrictive energy like Saturn, and it is in a square with the sun, which is all about self-expression, which is all about autonomy and the ego. And with this square, there can be a feeling of a tug of war between the Saturn person and the Sun person's relationship. So for that reason, it's not the easiest aspect to deal with somebody in a relationship, but it is very rewarding, especially if both of them are willing to be able to work through these energies together in the relationship. It can lead to a lot of maturing for both of them in this relationship and through this relationship as individuals. So just looking at the square aspect, this is an aspect that can be kind of challenging. It is an aspect that can bring into a relationship some obstacles and some tension. And it's likely going to make it so that between these two planets, there's going to be some friction in the relationship that is derived from where they are both coming from in this relationship. For the Sun person, this is all about the ego, identity, and even wanting to shine in. Saturn energy is more disciplined, responsible, controlled, and this can also clash with the Sun person's desire to really be able to just enjoy life at times in the relationship. And so with the square coming in between these two planets in this relationship, it really makes it so that they don't have this easy flowing kind of energy between the two of them. Instead, they're really going to be pushed to be able to really see and have their differences emphasized in this relationship, especially when it comes to things like the Sun person wanting to be able to have autonomy, to be able to experience just the enjoyment of life in a way that is going to allow for that free expression and the ability to really just shine and kind of do things their way, versus the Saturn person's more controlled way of doing things in a more responsible, disciplined way. And so it's going to really demand a lot of their attention as well as a lot of effort on both of their parts to make things work. In fact, this aspect can feel a lot like a push and pull happening between the two of them constantly. And even though at times possibly frustrating at times in the relationship, the square can have some benefits to the relationship, especially when it comes to being able to work through any of the conflicts that can come up with this aspect. And being able to really work through, being able to resolve any conflicts means that they are able to develop a stronger sense of a more defined relationship, especially when it comes to what the boundaries are and when it comes to being able to find a balance in their differences, especially when it comes to things like commitment from Saturn person and the Sun person's desire for freedom. And that can make the relationship stronger, and as a result, the square can actually be beneficial in the long run in this relationship. When it comes to having this synastry, for the Saturn person feels very protective over the Sun person, and that can make them feel responsible. And that can also make the Saturn person come across as being very critical of the Sun person, especially if there's too much of a carefree and even impulsiveness to the Sun person, where it comes across as if they're not taking things as seriously as the Saturn person is. They start to feel like the Sun person is challenging them, and they may view the Sun person as being a person who needs structure, guidance, and even things like discipline. The Saturn person may view the Sun person as kind of lacking in these things, and they may feel this duty or this responsibility to be the one to keep the relationship on track. And it can at times feel a bit limiting or like a burden on the Saturn person's relationship with the Sun person. As for them, they can feel this pressure to show up as the more responsible one, or even the more serious one in the relationship. And This can also frustrate the Saturn person in this relationship with the Sun person. And on top of that, the Saturn person can also find the Sun person's behavior, the way they show up in this relationship, as a bit unpredictable. And when it comes to the way they feel about the Sun person, there is an attraction towards the Sun person's warm energy and their vitality. And despite this, they can also come to find that there are certain things about the Sun person's behavior that kind of clash with their need for stability, as well as their need for security and control in the relationship. And when it comes to the Sun person in this relationship with the Saturn person, there is this level of restrictedness that they get in this relationship, especially with the Saturn person. But there is an appreciation for the structured and grounded energy that the Saturn person brings to the relationship. Even though at times it can feel stifling on the Sun person, it can be a great level of wisdom that the Saturn person brings into the Sun person's life. And that responsibility and that structure and stability is something that the Sun person can appreciate about the Saturn person. They have the ability to really keep things grounded in this relationship with the Sun person, and the Sun person can recognize and appreciate that about the Saturn person. However, there is also a feeling of being criticized at times by the Saturn person, and it can feel like the Saturn person is somewhat limiting the Sun person's freedom by pointing out all of the flaws about them. And this is when that push-pull kind of energy begins to exist between the two of them, because the Sun person really actually seeks out the Saturn person's approval, because the Saturn person is in this position where they are able to really make the Sun person feel criticized. But at the same time, the Sun person also develops a sense of resentment towards the Saturn person for restricting and limiting them, especially when it comes to their freedom. And that can really make the Sun person feel held back by the Saturn person in this relationship. Because the Sun person may feel that no matter how hard they try, they just can't fully get the Saturn person's approval, or they can't please the Saturn person fully. And both of them can really feel a little bit frustrated in this relationship with each other because of this dynamic. And the Sun person here can feel weighed down by the Saturn person when it comes to their serious nature. At times, it can be experienced as tough love when it comes to the way that the Saturn person is really helping the Sun person and loving the Sun person in this relationship. And the Sun person can recognize that at times, especially when it comes to the ability to really help the Sun person, especially when it comes to helping them grow in various ways, such as taking on responsibility and maturing through this relationship with the Saturn person. There is the level of supportedness that comes in from the Saturn person to the Sun person, even though it can feel quite restrictive at times. But the Sun person can recognize how it is supportive and also really also benefiting them as far as being able to grow and mature in certain ways. And that can be one of the positive things that come through this relationship, is the ability for the Sun person, especially if they're the kind of person who needs a bit of a push in this department, for the Saturn person to really encourage the Sun person to be more responsible, to be more grounded, and even to really face reality and mature. And while having this aspect can at times be difficult or even frustrating, there is also a sense of perseverance that comes through being able to work through any of those challenges. And they can actually have a very good foundation for having a long-term relationship. And there's a very strong potential for the longevity of this relationship. Because with the Saturn influence here, there is an emphasis on duty and commitment. And with the square here, there is also a lot of resilience that they can have in their relationship through those times, tough times, especially if they're both willing to work through it and any conflicts or any tensions or any frictions that come up in this relationship with this aspect. There is a lot of stability coming from the Saturn energy in this relationship, and it's really anchoring their relationship. And with the Sun person, they can sense the sense of stability with the Saturn person. in their relationship with the Saturn person, even during the difficult times, they have someone they can rely on in the Saturn person. And that can really stabilize this relationship between the two of them. And so the relationship can really strengthen through being able to work through any of those frictions, and having the Saturn energy in this relationship really makes it so that there is the reliability even in the challenging times. Because in the negative, this relationship can feel very restrictive, and it can even feel restrictive for the Saturn person as well as the Sun person in this relationship. For instance, the Saturn person can feel burdened by the desire to really protect the Sun person, and the Saturn person can feel restricted as far as being or feeling criticized by the Saturn person in this relationship. And they can also feel the sense of being held back in this relationship with the Saturn person at times, or like they're being judged. And this can be quite frustrating when it comes to the relationship for both of them. And it's because of the square that friction can lead to some clashes between the Sun person and the Saturn person, which can also turn into some power struggles in this relationship between the two of them to work through, and to really feel like they need to find a way to make themselves feel understood by each other and even feel appreciated for what they bring to this relationship with each other. Because the need for control when it comes to the Saturn person and the need for freedom when it comes to the Sun person can really clash, and that can really create some conflicts in this relationship at times, because it has so much potential to actually benefit both of the partners as individuals in the long run. And because it is Saturn with this aspect, it is going to be one that is going to be quite rewarding to the relationship itself in the long run, especially with things like patience and putting in effort, as well as when it comes to putting in the effort to understand each other and each other's perspectives in this relationship with each other. It can be greatly rewarding for the relationship itself in the long run. Well, that does it for this video on having your Saturn squaring your partner's Sun in Synastry. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and that you found it helpful. And if you did, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel for more videos. Well, that is where I love and leave you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys.